King. 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 King.
Great Tuesday. Welcome to the King Connections podcast. I'm your host, King. And I'm joined with author, and I'm excited to have him on my show, Mark Darden. How you doing today, Mark?
Doing pretty good today.
Now, one of the questions I always love to begin with to kind of really set the context is, what's your spiritual energy number in the moment right now, from 0 life sucks to 10 being life is awesome? What would you
I
say?
was I would say right now I'll say about an 8. So I'm doing things that I'm enjoying, like traveling and writing books, but there's some things that can improve. So I'll say right now I'll say about an 8.
Excellent, excellent. And thank you for indulging me with that question. It's a question I always ask everybody before I begin every interview, because what I've learned from my experience is that everybody has life going on before they come on the podcast. And what happens in life can actually drain your spiritual energy level down. So if anybody
Hmm.
5 or less, it's better to reschedule the interview instead of moving forward, because they're not going to be engaged, things of that nature. So
Hmm.
gratitude for accommodating me with that.
Yeah, no problem.
So as we begin, Mark, my first question for you is, if we were to meet on the street and I didn't know who you were, we met in a coffee place, for example, we just bumped into each other and you introduced yourself
Hmm.
to me, how would you introduce yourself to me?
Most likely I would introduce myself to you as a sports fan. So depending the context, I usually talk about sports, whether it's football, basketball, some of the teams that I enjoy. Also, depending on how like what I'm wearing, then I can also tell you like who I am or a part about me. So usually if I'm wearing a Script Ohio shirt, I'm usually going to a sports event with that. But if I'm wearing jeans, a vest, and a tie, like shirt and tie, that's usually the look I go with as an author. And then I will lead with, hey, I'm a children's book author.
Okay. And so you said the clothes kind of determines how you go with your
Hmm.
introduction.
Hmm. Yeah, so like this past weekend, I was in Philadelphia for an event at a community center. So I had vest, shirt, and tie, and then my jeans as well as some sneakers on. And that's typically what I wear when I do an event like that. I try to keep it consistent.
Okay. Okay. And you said you're a children's book author. Is that the only type of books you've written, or the type of books you're interested in writing? And if so, why?
So, so I've had written other books. So my first ever book was a travel log. It was about my trip or my travels to all 30 Major League Baseball stadiums back during the 2017 season. And once I had that book completed, COVID hit and I had a little bit more time on my hands to think about what I wanted to do next. And I said, hey, I already wrote this one book. I could probably do a children's book. Let me do some research, see what I need to do, find an illustrator, find an editor and whatnot. And now I usually just stick with children's books at the moment.
And so, what inspired you to write a children's book to begin with?
So partially from my childhood. So my mom like always bought me books, whether it be like Dr. Seuss or other authors from that time, and she'll always read stories to me. And that's where it really got the inspiration going, was just remember what I enjoyed as a kid when I was 5, 6, 7 years old and reading some of those books.
Okay. All right. And so, we're going to talk a little about your purpose and calling. And so, my question would now be, as a storyteller, what caused you to bring Elijah Goes to Philadelphia to the world? In other words, what deeper purpose were you seeking to share with the world in that
So
space?
for me, when it comes to the books, I want to inspire kids to travel and just get outside of their comfort zone. So much in life we stay like comfortable in like our own neighborhood or our own city or state, and I just wanted kids to like open their minds and explore their surroundings and get outside of their neighborhood or even get outside of the city to see the world. Because for me, I really enjoy traveling, and that's one of my passions in life is traveling. And it's one thing to read or see something on TV or in a book. It's another thing to actually experience that place in person.
Hmm. Was there any particular children's author that inspired you uh, on this course you're on? This journey?
So not a children's book author, but there was a TV show when I was younger, The Magic School Bus, and I always remember that TV show because it was more science based, but they had like an entertainment value to it, and that show always stuck in my head. So when it came to creating these Elijah books, I always thought, okay, remember why you liked The Magic School Bus.
Hmm. And why Philadelphia? Why Elijah goes to Philadelphia, that city specific?
So my first book was my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, and that book was more of a scavenger hunt style book. So for the Philadelphia book, I wanted to do something that had a little bit of time travel in it because it's such a historical city with Independence Hall and Reading Terminal Market and just the history involved in the city. I thought it'd be a good idea to use time travel as a way to help kids learn about the city.
All right. So why don't you, for our listening audience, kind of describe the heartbeat, the story of Elijah Goes to Philadelphia so we can get a better understanding.
So with the story, Elijah found out from some friends that Philadelphia wasn't a good place to visit, and he's just not looking forward to visiting the city with his dad. And his father is trying to tell him like, "Hey, we're gonna have a good time, get some rest." So while he's sleeping in his dreams, he and his dad end up in a place that they don't recognize, and they're trying to figure out where they're at. Then they run into a guy named Vinny, and he's like their tour guide throughout the city. So throughout the story, they go to different places during different time periods. So like Independence Hall in 1776, they see the Declaration of Independence being signed, or they go to the USS New Jersey after it was built, about to go out to sea during World War II. So that's pretty much the premise behind the book.
Okay. And now, so you've obviously been to Philadelphia and you've actually
Mm-hmm.
visited those landmarks and those museums and things you spoke of.
Mm-hmm.
So did that leave an imprint on you as far as just a history fan or a student of history yourself?
Yeah, so like this past weekend, I was in Philadelphia. I actually got a chance to go on the USS New Jersey. So
Hmm.
last year I went to Philadelphia. I got a chance to see it in dry dock when it was being repaired and getting a fresh coat of paint on it, and I thought that was cool. But then this year, I got the chance to actually go on the ship and see like the turrets and see where the captain quarters were and see different parts of the ship, and it was cool just being able to see the ship in person as opposed to just reading about it on the internet.
How difficult was it for you to find an illustrator for for your books?
It was somewhat challenging. So for me, finding an illustrator, I went to a college job site. So there's a art school that wasn't too far from the gym that I go to, and I put out a job posting on their website, and I got a few hits on it. And one of the people that responded to it was Ein. She was the illustrator, and she did amazing work for my first book with Cleveland, and now this book with Philadelphia.
Okay. How important would you say storytelling fits into your life as a leader, as a man, as an author going forward?
I think it's very important because it shows that you actually experience life. It's one thing to just talk about other people or talk about other concepts. Another thing to go out there and do stuff and then have a story to tell later.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, one of the most important things I do in my life or every day is I go through a list of gratitude moments. And it really kind of sets my context. So, for example, the question I asked you, what's your spiritual energy number? I'll give you a little more background on that, and then I ask my question.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm a former system engineer. So, for me, everything is logical. And I came up with that idea because I went to a couple of community meetings. They would ask people, what's your check-in number? And people would just give out a number. And then I thought about that, and I said, let me put an engineering hat on that, because some days I might not wake up at 2. I might wake up at 2 or 3, just how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if I go with that and I choose that lower number, then how does that benefit me throughout my day? If I say I'm a 4, right, and I give my
Hmm.
reason for being a 4, and they may be justified. I might be not feeling well health wise, or I might be stressed out, my anxiety, whatever the case may be. So, but what I've learned in my self discovery is that when I go through my list of gratitude, things I'm grateful for, my life, my health, my ability to see, hear, walk, talk, stand, breathe. Once I go through
Hmm.
that list, I'm always a 10, because that just really sets the context that, because no matter how great I may think my day is going or what I'm working on that may change my life, if I can't see or hear, that's going to be the most dominant thing.
Hmm.
So, with that being said, gratitude is definitely something very important to me. I go through a list of gratitude every day to set my 10 every morning. And so I set that context of the question because I want to ask you, what are some of the things that you're most deeply grateful for as your journey as an author, and your life as a man as well?
So for me, I'm deeply grateful for my family. So they've always supported me when it came to writing books. They may have their concerns here and there, but for the most part, they're always supporting, either buying the books or telling their friends about, hey, Mark wrote a book. You should check it out. Also, I'm just happy to have my health because I see some of my older relatives, they're not in the best shape, or I see people issues either with cancer or either with or some type of ailment. And I think to myself, like, hey, I can walk around, I can walk pretty normally, I can run, I can actually be active. So I try to always look at the positives when it comes to my day to day life instead of focusing on stuff that's either mundane or just straight up boring.
Now, I know you mentioned gym before, and I see you have a shirt that says world class gym, and you just mentioned health. How important is, and you talked about, I understand health is important. So,
Mhm.
do you fit going to the gym into your writing when you're writing on a daily basis? Does that help you kind of move through your writing better by going to the gym, or do they complement one another as far as giving you that boost of energy and endorphins going in your mind?
Well, for me, it really doesn't go with the writing. It's just something that I've done pretty much almost my entire life. So high school, I used to do cross country and track, so we will always be fit and work out. In college, I started to hit the weights way back in 2008, and that's just something that's just carried me throughout my life. So it's one of those things that I do just to either have something, a goal to strive towards and work towards something, or just to be able to move around. So right now, I'm in my mid 30s, and it's getting somewhat harder to do some things, or I can't do things that I used to do in my 20s, but it's just more so keep something consistent in my life that I've been doing for the last like 20 years or so.
Do you think you ever write a book about a children's book specifically about working out or health in that regard?
Maybe if I see a good opportunity, I can consider that in the future.
Okay. And so, are your is it safe to say that most of your books that you're going to write about children are going to be traveling to different areas because
Yes,
you're specialized? And Elijah,
yes, because
will it always be Elijah as your um,
yeah. So Elijah is just based on myself as an 8 year old. So my like a little background on my travel history. I really got the go or got the urge to travel through my aunt. Like I remember we used to get on the Greyhound bus and she took me to Washington D.C. for the first time. So that really kind of started it. And then over time, I got to go to more and more places. And I was like, hey, this is something that I enjoy to do. I want to see. I want to get other kids to do it.
and what examples about Elijah Goes to Philadelphia would you give to potential parents maybe who listen to the show who may be thinking, well, this is a great book for my kid? What would you share with them, or what would you say to them to kind of get them excited about purchasing the book for their child and sharing that story with them?
So it's one of those things where you can get the parents involved by showing them different places as well. Because sometimes you make those memories when you're young. So let's say you go, I don't know, you go to a Philadelphia Eagles game with like your mom and dad,
Mm.
and they win, it's one of those moments where you create something that lasts a lifetime for a child, and they may not remember the cost or how much time it went into planning out a trip like that or an event like that. But they always will remember that memory of them going to the game with their parents.
So you still find yourself actively traveling quite a bit now?
Yep, yeah. So like this year alone, I've been to a few cities. I've been to New York, Las Vegas, Indianapolis, Philadelphia this past weekend, Houston, Newark, and I got a few more trips planned out throughout the rest of the year.
And so you kind of plan your trips ahead and say these are the cities I want to go to.
Yeah,
And
for the most part, I do. So typically, I try to do two big vacations a year. So earlier this year, Las Vegas was that one big vacation, and then later in October, I do plan on going international for a vacation, and then I try to sneak in some weekend trips here and there.
now, when you travel, do you intentionally say to yourself, I'm going to visit certain historical landmarks or museums just for the purposes of getting data later on? Because I might want to take Elijah through these journeys.
Yeah, partially yes and no. So one example is I went to Houston last month, and that was just to go to Houston just to visit the city. But I didn't intentionally try to do research for Elijah goes to like Houston or something like that. I just went just to go. And then over time, when I was visiting different places, I said, maybe I could use it for a book sometime in the future.
Hmm. What city would you say, of all the cities you've been to, left the most deepest imprint on your mind as I just really love the cities from the culture, art, or whatever that you found to be interesting about the city?
So for me, it's always been Washington, D.C. So like I mentioned earlier, like my first time going there, me and my aunt, we went on a Greyhound bus. It took about 10 hours from Cleveland to get there, and I just remember that trip in particular because we went to the Washington Monument. We got to go all the way up to the top to see overlook of the city, and then we went to a couple of the Smithsonian museums, and we did like the Air and Space Museum and the American History Museum. And I just remember being little, they had this tour, they had this thing called a tour mobile, and you could get on like the microphone and announce like the next stop. And I remember the lady, she got me to like announce the next stop for the tour mobile. So I always thought that was pretty cool.
Hmm. Yeah, actually, I spent my second half of my life. I moved to DC when I was 18, so pretty familiar with DC. You know, what's interesting is that you can live in a city your whole life and not go to historical landmarks, take them for granted. You always
Yep.
say, I'm gonna go, then you find out, I've never been. Like I've never been up in the Washington Monument. I've been to it a lot, been around it,
Hmm.
quite a bit, but I've never gone inside the Washington Monument. Would you
Hmm.
would you say that on your trip to DC that you get a chance to go to? Is there anything that you felt was so memorable that you want to share with Elijah in a future book?
Yeah, so one place I do enjoy visiting when I go there is Ben's Chili Bowl on U Street. So I make it a point to visit that place every time I go to DC, and really nothing super emotional connection to it. I just like going there. It's just one of those places that I always enjoy going to and getting a half smoke when I get the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, it's interesting. You say Ben Chili Bowl, and I've been in Ben Chili Bowl a lot, and it's definitely when I was younger, it was definitely a good spot to go to late night. You get food and the music, the jukebox, and the atmosphere is always vibrant. But
Hmm.
the street itself is a very historical place in DC, as you all, I'm sure, as you're aware of. So I would
Hmm.
love to have a book about Elijah goes to Washington D.C. and have you talk about the history and the culture. DC has a lot of historical places, but U Street in particular, with the jazz greats that have gone through there, Duke Ellington, and all those individuals spent time on U Street. So it's just really iconic in the African American historical context.
Hmm. Yeah, there's so much history in DC, so it makes it a little challenging to write a book and try to put a lot of information within 32 pages of a book, of a children's book.
Okay, well, that's a good point. So you keep your children's books to 32 pages. Is that a formula that you learned?
Yeah, that's a formula I learned over time. So as I was doing my research, I learned that most children's books, if you count the pages, including the front matter and the back matter, usually is by a number divisible by 8. So it'll be like 24, 32, 40, 48, 56.
Hmm.
It'll be something along those lines. So whatever you do or write, it has to be within those 32, 40, 48 pages, however you decide to write the book.
And when you're writing children's books, do you find yourself putting yourself in the space of a child, well, taking yourself back to when you were at that age with your grandmother you talked about on the bus trip? You find
Hmm.
yourself in that headspace as you're writing a book, as you're reading a book from their perspective?
Yeah, that's a challenging part too. Like being an adult, we have a way of looking at certain things, but you also got to remember ultimately it's a child reading the book or it's a parent reading the book to their child. So ultimately, you got to make your book valuable to that kid or the parent or the teacher or whoever else, not just solely what you want to do.
Hmm. What's the most difficult thing about writing a children's book?
I think the biggest challenge for me is just being able to write a complete story within a limited space. So I mentioned earlier that my books are 32 pages, but in reality, you only got about 26, 27, 28 pages because you still got to consider the front matter, which is like the copyright page and the title page. And then if you got back matter, like in my book, I need a page to have that back matter in the back. So I gotta make sure whatever story I create, it has to fit within 20 about 28 pages or so.
Hmm. Now, notice that Elijah's journey. You mentioned the fact about his father and time travel, and my question is, how important was it for you to weave into the father-son connection into that story?
For me, it was important because it's just something I feel as though you don't see that often, in particular with African American kids. Sometimes you don't see it, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of good dads out there. They're committed to their children. They want to see them grow and succeed and do well. And also, that relationship was somewhat based on my uncle because he was someone that was like that father figure for me growing up.
Hmm. Now, do you find yourself being connected to, or have you joined any groups on Facebook or maybe just the internet itself that are children author type groups?
Yes, so I've joined a few groups on Facebook, and they've been really valuable in exchanging information or finding out new strategies on how to write a book, and also just having a support system there because some people are going the traditional route and going through a publisher, or you get someone like myself who's going the independent route, and you got to do everything. So it's nice to see be in a community where you get that support and as well as exchange ideas.
And what has your experience been going through the independent route to get your books out there?
It's been a really trying, but I say satisfying journey because when I first started that baseball book, I did research on independent publishing and I said to myself, hey, this is my story. If I'm going to write my story, I might as well do all the work to get the book published myself. And so that's kind of how I got the ball rolling on doing independent publishing. And then with the children's books, I had to learn like get an illustrator or find a book manufacturer and find like editors to make sure I had the best possible book that I can present to the world.
You know, my whole mantra that I advocate for is what I call connect with intent. That's why I have the connect with intent formula. And I have it laid out: strategy plus connections plus systems plus value is capital, social capital, then social capital generates financial capital. So, kind of in
Mhm.
that spirit, what originally inspired you to create your Buckeye Muscle Media and kind of say, I'm going to be an independent publisher and an author at the same time?
Yeah, so when it came to that baseball book, I said to myself, hey, if I'm going to do this on my own, I might as well be legitimate and get my own. company. So I did a little research on forming an LLC here in Ohio and got Buckeye Muscle Media started back in 2019.
Did you have any mentors in that space? Anybody that you can get advice from to kind of guide you to?
Nah, it was just a lot of research on the internet. But then over time, as I started joining more of the Facebook groups as well as different organizations, then I started to get like mentor and like advice from people that's in the trenches themselves.
Yeah, because one of the things, the reason I mentioned my connecting with intent formula, because as a business consultant, I'm about helping people build connections and what I call love energy tribes. One of the things I would suggest to you, if you're not already doing it yourself already, is LinkedIn is a great source for connecting with people, particularly in a professional manner. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
Facebook groups may be as well, but I know LinkedIn, you can get much more information about people's bios and things. And I would
Mm-hmm.
really suggest, because in any business, period, whether it's regardless of whatever business you're in, I believe that having a mentor is key and critical because it really helps you navigate those uncertain, uncharted waters that you're going to face, right?
Mm-hmm.
And having someone who's done it before that can give you some connections that can help you create systems around it, they help you value everything I'm advocating. The formula could be key. So I just want to share that with you as an idea that I would
Mm-hmm.
look on LinkedIn, search for children authors or just authors or publishers, and just really, build or send out connection requests that we just kind of really build those relationships with folks. Because I know in business, I've made some huge mistakes that could have been avoided for me had I had a mentor or someone to kind of guide me along the journey. Because you even used the
Mm-hmm.
term, we talked about Elijah in your story, you said, well, I want to make sure he had a guide, right? So you see the importance of that mentor guide in that part of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm happy that you brought up LinkedIn because I just signed up for it a few months ago. One of my marketing people, she suggested LinkedIn, and for me, I kind of was less like, okay, that's just one more social media app that I have to use because there's so many of them nowadays. But then I changed my mindset on it to just say, hey, this is a tool that you put in your toolbox. It's something that it could come back to help you out later. So just put yourself out there, and you just never know. Especially if you're trying to expand your network, try to get your hands in as many pots as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. LinkedIn is my sole, LinkedIn and YouTube are my two sole social media sites that I utilize. I mean, I built my business completely off LinkedIn, primarily
Mm-hmm.
because, again, the system engineering me, I'm big on data. And so the thing about LinkedIn and strategy you want to use on LinkedIn is that LinkedIn gives you an opportunity, like you can do research on somebody and you can click connect. And that's one way, right? And that connection
Mm-hmm.
request that LinkedIn sends a default system just says somebody wants to connect. Now, you may or may not get certain people to accept that connection request. But what I recommend, and this is why I really love LinkedIn, is that you can now also choose an option to say customize requests, a customized connection request. And then you can put some personal in there, which I suggest that people do. Like read the person's bio, read some of their posts, go to their website, and then now put a connection request by using a specific reference to something they wrote about, something they're passionate about. And you're going to
Mm-hmm.
increase the likelihood of getting that connection request. And then on top of that, the next thing I would say, once you get that connection request, what you want to do is, I suggest, is invite them to hop on a Zoom meeting with you. Like have that part of your process, right? That
Mm-hmm.
once you get the connection established, ask the person to hop on a Zoom meeting. And now, not everybody's going to do that, but the great thing about it is folks who do hop on a Zoom meeting with you, it allows you to have this conversation like we're having right now with a complete stranger. And if you've done the research, because what I've learned, and it's true, everybody's favorite radio station is WWIFM. What's in it for me? Right. So people's favorite questions or conversations are always going to be about them. So just some tips on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn for you that, always have a great profile, have a picture. A lot of people send me connection requests and they don't even have a picture. I just ignore those. So I'm like,
Yeah, that's not going to help.
right, you're not willing to put a picture up, then I'm not willing to give you the time to engage with you, because more likely you're going to be spam and you didn't take time to really create your profile. So just kind of want to share those tips with you on LinkedIn as a way to really kind of build your network along those lines.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate that, because to me, LinkedIn is still kind of foreign to me. So I've been adding people here and there, but really want to try to ramp it up and really utilize it to its full potential.
And I give you an idea. I actually send out, LinkedIn allows you to, it's a tool called Sales Navigator, and it allows you to send out up to 30 DMs, direct messages per day, right? And I send out about 30 a day, and I normally get about maybe 10 to 15 new connections each week following that strategy. And these are people who, again, from around the world. Whether I had a conversation with somebody from Switzerland the other day, you know, and it's just interesting to really have these rich conversations. Because again, I don't know any other social platform you can do that. Facebook, you don't even have to use, you know, you can put a picture of your car as your Facebook image. So there's no telling who this person is. And then people, and again, I'm not saying Facebook's not a great place to connect with people. I'm just saying that the data engineering me, you can get so much data upon someone on LinkedIn that can help you prepare for the conversation. And it's always that preparation that's going to help you build a stronger connection with that person. And then you never know who that person can be connected to that could say, wow, I love what you're doing. And as a friend of mine, she runs a youth movement or a youth course, and I like to buy 100 copies of your book to give to them, right? So that kind of connection and relationship can come from LinkedIn pretty easily, to be honest.
Yeah, like you really just don't know who you'll come across. Like it could be someone that's not that has no relation to books. Like they're not a librarian or teacher, but they know someone that's a librarian or a teacher. And I've had a few instances where I got connections like that, either through going to an event or just like talking to someone at a conference, and then they put me in touch with somebody else, and that's helped me out along the way.
Now, two more questions before we go to our break in for our sponsor. That is, do you intend to continue writing children's books as a business revenue generating mechanism, or you're going to use the publishing model, Buckeye Muscle Media, for revenue, or are you going to use a combination of both?
I say a combination of both. So I would create the books as a revenue stream, but also try to parlay my knowledge and journey along the way to get into speaking engagements at like different writing conferences or publisher conferences to just get my experience on my journey in writing children's books, or just going the independent route. And hopefully that can help somebody else out along the way while they're on their journey.
All right. Then my last question before we go to our break for our sponsor is, you know, as someone who loves sports, travel, writing, you know, fitness, how important do you feel that is in expressing to someone when you first meet them, those passions that you have?
For me, it's something that helps me. For me, it helps me feel alive. Like I'm actually doing stuff as opposed to just sitting at home watching TV or just watching, I don't know, some reality TV show. For me, that's something there's those things I really enjoy doing. So I just love being around people that talk about sports or WWE or children's books or travel. And that's when I usually feel the most alive, when I talk about stuff that I enjoy about.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we're going to take like I said, a 2-minute break for our sponsor. Then we're going to pick back up on the other side. So
all right.
The playbook for growing a local business online is simple. Capture new leads, conversationally convert those leads into sales, turn those customers into positive reviews, and then reactivate those customers into repeat buyers. And that's exactly what our platform does. In order to consistently generate new leads, you first need to be found. The quickest way to get search engines like Google to put your business at the top of search results is by having a steady flow of positive reviews. With our platform, you can show up in search and stand apart from your local competition by easily collecting new customer reviews through text. But getting found is only the beginning. Most consumers choose the first business that responds to them. So unless you start conversations with potential customers almost instantly, they'll go somewhere else. That's why we make starting conversations with website visitors as easy as clicking a button, connecting you instantly through text message so the conversation doesn't end when they leave your website. And we bring all your leads, no matter where they come from, into a single conversation stream that supports text, email, video messaging, Google Business Chats, and even Facebook and Instagram DMs, so you can respond faster and more efficiently than ever. When it comes to turning all those conversations into customers, we make collecting payments just another convenient part of the combo, so you get paid faster no matter how they prefer to pay. Next, you'll want to turn your new customers into happy reviews, which is a snap with our new review request quick actions. The more conversations and customers you generate, the easier it becomes to drive repeat business. We make reactivating contacts into customers as easy as, yup, you guessed it, the push of a button. With bulk actions, you can send out text and email campaigns to generate new sales whenever you have a new update, promotion, or story to tell. We make modern online marketing simple. Let's start growing your business today.
And we're back. Welcome to the King Connections podcast. I'm here with author Mark Darden, and we're in our second phase of our show. And so, Mark, now I kind of want to shift focus and talk about really what kind of legacy and impact that you want to leave in your writings, in your work that you're doing. And so I want to ask a couple questions about that. Now, storytelling can be a form of legacy. How do you see Elijah's adventure becoming part of your own legacy and imprint you leave on the world?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I remember I told my uncle. Well, my uncle had asked me a few years ago, like, what do you look to gain from writing these books? This was back when I first released the Cleveland book, and I remember telling them that I wanted something that would outlive me and something that would inspire kids even long after I go away. So for me, the legacy is just saying, like, hey, this is what Mark did in his life. Here's what this is what he gave back to the world, and it's to give the kids the opportunity or inspire them to travel to see the world.
Hmm. And when you imagine children reading your books, what do you hope? What hope do you hope and sparks in them? Curiosity, courage, sense of belonging.
Yeah, I say a little bit of curiosity and courage. So I think we've all been in experiences where we've been curious about something, but we may not have just had that like courage or gumption to go and take advantage of it or take the initiative to go towards something. So I want to have kids have the experience of being able to do different things that may be a little bit outside of their comfort zone, like either go somewhere they wouldn't normally go or try a new food that they wouldn't normally try.
What role do you see your stories playing in the lives of children and families? Like, in other words, is it to be education, inspiration, connection, or something deeper?
I would say it'd be educational as well as entertaining. So maybe if a kid, let's say the kid lives in Chicago and they read, unless you go to Philadelphia, it may inspire that family to say, hey, let's take a family vacation to Philadelphia and go see some of these places. And also it goes to making those memories with your parents or siblings or whoever. And down the road, they'll always remember those good times with the people that they love and enjoy.
Hmm. Now, did you grow up like I did, reading comic books? Did you ever,
I wasn't the biggest comic book reader. I had some, but I was more of the watch the Discovery Channel type person and watch the Extreme Engineering show or watch something on TLC, that type of kid.
Okay, well, good. Yeah, you had that learning in you. You wanted to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of with that in mind, if you can find someone from the history, the Learning Channel, or any of those other inspirational channels or stories you watched, if you can kind of co-write Elijah's next story with that person, who would they be, and kind of what would you write about in that context?
So from like a person from history.
Right.
Okay. Ooh, there's a lot of good people that I probably would like to write with. That's a good question. Maybe Booker T. Washington. He was a pretty good
Hmm.
person. Maybe someone like that. Or I remember Amelia Earhart when she used to fly airplanes, so she'd probably be someone that's good as well because she traveled across the world on a plane, and it'd be cool to have someone like that who um, actually saw the world from a different perspective, and it'd be cool to get her perspective on
Yeah.
things. Maybe even Bessie, I believe it's Bessie Coleman. She was she was a pilot. I'm trying to remember the first African American female pilot. She would have been a good inspiration as well.
Hmm.
I'm blanking on the name. I apologize, but like she just popped into my head as well.
You ever remember the children's book? It became a video game later on. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
Yep. Yeah, I remember watching the TV show when I was little.
Yeah, I was thinking when you mentioned Amelia Earhart, that came to my mind as like where in the world is Elijah? Like it could be like not copying that title exactly, but just putting Elijah
Hmm.
adventures where you kind of base off what he's seeing. You got to use your history, your knowledge of history and locations and travel to kind
Hmm.
of where he might be at that time.
Hmm.
What would you say is how many stories would you feel that Elijah may uh, come into? You may actually write about Elijah. Like how many more stories you think he may be the central character in your books going forward?
So as many as I could come up with. So right now I have about three more stories that I'm currently writing, but I see it as a series that can continue as long as I have the inspiration or have the willpower to write them. So I can see them going to different cities, not only in the U.S. but also internationally, like London or Toronto or Johannesburg. So as long as there's a demand for the books and I'm willing or have still have the inspiration to write them, then I'll keep writing them.
Now with Buckeye Muscle Media, would you also work to help get new authors published as well, act as a publishing house for them, or are you going to only publish your books through them?
At the moment, I'm just going to focus on my own books, but maybe down the road, if I become more established as a publishing company, maybe I could take on an author here or a few authors and help them on their journey.
What advice would you give to anybody who's watching this now, who is an aspiring children's author or just author in general? What advice would you give them to help them kind of get their first book written?
So I would tell them this: read what you wrote. Now that sounds like cliche or like obvious advice, but I remember with the first Cleveland book, I was so happy to get the book in my hands, look at the illustrations, and really just have a book in my hand. I gave it to my mom, and my mom found some typos in it.
Hmm.
And I was just like, oh no. Like I spent all this money to get these printed and they're like missing punctuation, the word misspelled. And I was just like, if I just took the time to read over it or get somebody else to read it for you, that way you have two or three, four different sets of eyes. They may catch something that you don't see.
Absolutely. How do you use AI at all in your writing for editing or anything like that at all?
I don't use it for the writing, but I do use it for a lot of the administrative stuff that I do when it comes to the business. So if I'm sending emails to different teachers or bookshops or different media outlets, then I use AI to help me write those emails. Because for me, that's not the most enjoyable part of the job and not necessarily my best strength, but it's something that helps me out along the way.
What is one thing that you would really want our listening audience to really understand and know about you as they listen to this interview?
I'm just someone that enjoys life, so I try to take advantage of the moment and go out there and experience different things that I probably wouldn't normally do, get outside of my comfort zone and try to do as much stuff as I possibly can do.
Excellent. And finally, Mark, for the parents, educators, and young dreamers listening, what wisdom would you pass on about the power of stories to change how we see ourselves, our families, and the world?
I would say, like, for kids, really just stay curious. So I feel like with kids, they're probably the most malleable and the most curious, and they're out there trying to explore the world and figure out things on their own. And I would urge parents to let them explore that curiosity because it may lead them to something that they really enjoy, or they may try something out and they don't enjoy it. But I would just say for kids, like stay curious and try different things out because you just never know what you may like.
Absolutely, absolutely. But Mark, I want to thank you for being on the King Connections podcast, and I want to give you an opportunity now to share any contact information that you may have, websites, where you can copy your book, etc.
Yeah, thanks. So, my website is markdarden.com. So that's my blogging website. You can learn more about me or anything that's going on in my life. Also, my social media is at Buckeye Muscle, and that's for Instagram as well as Threads. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Mark Darden. Company name is Buckeye Muscle Media. There's also an Instagram as well as a Facebook page for that. So if you want to get in contact with me, you can either shoot me a DM or you can send me an email at mark@buckeyemuscle.com.
Excellent. Well, Mark, again, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. Thank you for traveling and being inspired to write the books. I look forward to sharing your information and your books with people I know who actually work in the children's space. And hopefully you all can set up some type of virtual reading ceremonies or sessions and help get your book out there more to our listening audience.
Oh, thank you, King. I would greatly appreciate that. And thank you for having me on your show.
Glad to have you. So with that being said, we're going to wrap up today's episode. Until our next episode of King Connections podcast, let's all continue to connect with intent. Thank you.